afternoon. This is Courtney Fairchild, President and CEO of Global Services. Welcome to our next installment of The New Normal, where we talk about how COVID-19 has affected the lives of all of us, and especially government contractors. Today, I have my longtime friend and teaming partner, Stephanie Alexander, with me, the CEO and founder of Boost LLC. So Boost consultants are a team of seasoned professionals that provide an efficient full suite of services back end to government contractors, to the GovCon world and community. Part of that service is recruiting, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. But Stephanie, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to see you virtually, of course.
It's always good to see you. I miss seeing you in person.
I know. I miss people.
I
tell people, you want to hear something weird? I tell people I miss wearing a name badge. Like, when was the last time you actually had to go somewhere and wear a name badge? I was like, I never thought I'd ever say those words, but I miss wearing a name badge. We talk about the new normal. Yeah. I need a name badge.
Exactly. That's really interesting because it means you're going to talk to people at least, yeah, right? Oh, that's
people.
Such a valid point.
People who I don't live with or connect with on Zoom all the time with. I'm definitely missing parts of the connection and the human element. And I think that's particularly challenging as you talk about recruiting and as you talk about trying to hire an entire team, right? So our company has always been virtual. We have a tiny little office that one or two of us were working out of, and we gave up on that. And so we overly communicate via the Teams platform, the Zoom platform, just like everybody else. But we've also been through a kind of a growth phase. And so a challenge for us is hiring, at least before, most of the folks were kind of near us and we'd have a coffee or we'd go, there'd be some sort of human connection. And now all recruiting, not that it wasn't before, but even more so now, it's more about online, all the Zoom calls, getting, how do people show up when they show up on camera, and can you really get to know them as people versus yet another Zoom call? So yeah, I think it's challenging for everybody.
You bring up an interesting point, just to unpack a little bit about what you just talked about. First of all, that you were already virtual. So I assume that as a part of COVID, not a huge amount of change, but even for those companies that really were virtual before, there still has been some bit of change. So how have you, as a company, changed your own internal practices at all, even just COVID related?
It's crazy, but yeah, we actually have changed. So before we have employees that I've never met in person before because they work virtually and they live in a different state and things like that. But we are now spending more and more of our time on, as I mentioned, the different platforms. For us, we tend to use Microsoft Teams because that's the platform that we utilize the most. And so we have a lot more face-to-face in terms of online types of conversations.
It's interesting. I think you're right that that my team we're finding more about each other personally than we did before.
The cats come in, right? The dog comes in. We all know each other's animals.
Did you just get
we all know
new
each other's
kittens?
kids. And honestly, I don't know about you, but every time an animal makes a sighting or one of the kids, we're way more interested in that than we are about whatever we're talking about. And we're just like, it's a welcome break. We're like, oh, dog. So, and most of the people at Boost at least have animals or pets. So it's been fun to see the various the various things going on.
You are one of my heroes during all of this. I've been paying attention to the things that you've been doing to keep morale at Boost high. And why don't you tell us just a couple of the fun things that you've done for your employees, great ideas. I know they've all spoken to me and say they love it. So I thought I'd let you tell me about
thank
that.
you. So I am a big believer in, just kind of the unexpected little something in the mail that's not an invoice or a bill or, tax payment due, or just a little something that shows you care. So in the beginning, I think back in April, we did a Boost bag, if you will, and it had all sorts of like COVID fun fun as you can make it, a coloring book about COVID, Cards Against Humanity, the family style version, relaxing soap and candles. One of my favorites that I shouldn't admit to, but the F-bomb, stress reliever. We got a lot of use out of that. And so for all of our local folks, I actually took the time to go out and hand deliver them, socially distanced, of course, and outside and with masks and all the rest of it. But it was a good way to just check in on people and be like, how you doing? Do you have toilet paper? What do you need?
Right.
Like, how's your mental health? Like, because I think that we all try and we go to our Zoom meetings and we go to our calls and we say everything's fine and we're working on this and we talk about work and we talk a little bit about personal, but I think there's something to putting eyes on someone to be able to say, how are you really doing?
One of the real things that does concern me more than anything about being virtual is recruiting. We, like you, are very busy and will likely have to take on some talent prior to getting back into any sort of, what we're going to call normal routine and space. So tell me what's important for employers to start thinking about as they have a need for recruiting before we get back to that point as well.
So I think there's two critical factors in, making it a successful hire. One is the actual interviews themselves. Who's on them? What are the questions that you're asking? How real are you? And how are you portraying your company? What are those conversations around? The second is the onboarding. I think people think of onboarding as day one or day two. Like, hey, fill out your tax forms, and your payroll forms and we're done. And now more than ever, onboarding is critical, and it is continuous, and it is how do you connect with the company? How do you know who you work for? How do I share with you the values that I want you to know about our company and why we're different and what we do differently? And how do I make sure that you share those same values and are we aligned? The other thing is training. I think now more than ever, we've got to, you can't just leave people off on an island. And I know that we sometimes do that and we don't mean to, but it's just kind of one of those, we're so busy and we don't, especially as small businesses, may not have as robust a training program. And thinking about like the new employee experience from day one on, who's going to talk to them? You don't walk down the hallway anymore, right? Like, who's taking them out to lunch on the first day? No one. Those are the things that we took for granted before that now you have to really put extra thought to. And so I think it starts with who you have on the interview team, and what are the questions that you're asking? So yes, there are technical questions like, can you do the job? Yes or no. But those are just kind of the basics, right? Like, you want to ask probing questions to get the technical aspect, but you also want to find out about them and what their challenges are and what, where they're going to thrive and how best to communicate with them.
To be able to impart my company culture is very important to me. I take it so seriously, the environment that we all came up with together and how we communicate. And that's my biggest fear of not being able to properly translate. I think we can find the right people to fit that culture, but being able from afar to make people feel what is important as a company, as employees, to each other. Although I will say, the teamwork's only gotten better virtually, which is bizarre, right? I'm watching us communicate better and all of us supporting each other even better than before. So maybe I shouldn't be as scared of recruiting right now as I feel like I am.
I think people are more open to taking chances. Here's my fallback excuse for anything: 2020, right? It's the perfect excuse for anything. So you try out as employees who are looking for new opportunities, you try out a new gig and it doesn't work. Hey, 2020, chalk it up to that, right? Yeah. You try out now's the time to be pushing and doing new things because you're forced to anyway. And so if you can get away with it, just the issue is know when you're failing and fail quickly, as people say, right? And adjust as required. But maybe now's the time to take a little bit of a chance on someone that may not have fit your exact background before. Somebody who, and maybe now's the time I think that, you take a chance on employers, people who, They see kind of like the values alignment, right? Like, are we in alignment on how we think about the world, how we think about like where our priorities are, and do our values align? We don't have to have the same thoughts on everything. Dear God, no, that's boring. But
no, I don't need a bunch of me's running around.
No,
that would be
not
silly.
at all. Neither of us do.
I do think that over the last 10 years, we've been in business for 20. Over the last 10 years, we've made it a priority to hire for culture, to really get to know the personal side. As you say, I actually think the technical side is the easiest thing to take care of. Are there any different ways or questions? If I already was operating that way, am I just doing my same recruiting but via Zoom?
I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice. So you need to ask more probing questions, in my mind. You need to ask more. I mean, like now when you can't put eyeballs on them, when you may never, who knows when you're going to actually meet this person in person, it's weird. But I want to know more about your challenges. I want to know what your challenges are right now. I want to know like how you handle adversity. I want to know, like, are you resilient? Resiliency is something that I don't think people give nearly enough credit to. I will take spunky person who's made it through some tough times over, you know what I mean? Because I feel like then you're gonna tough it out, right? Like you're gonna know, like not every day is perfect, and no company is perfect, and no client is perfect.
And 2020 is not perfect.
2020. So I mean, like I look for, are you innovative? Do you show initiative? Are you spunky? Have you had some rough times? Because if you have and you're willing to talk about them, or you're willing to say what your challenges are, then you're willing to admit to challenges, right? And I don't want people who put up only armor, who, those are the people who will never cry for help. Those are the people who will never ask for it. Those are the people that get in the weeds very quickly and you have to help them out, right? I want somebody who's going to raise their hand and be like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Can someone help me? Because I'm not hiring you to know everything. Like I'm hiring you to be smart enough to tell me when you don't know it. And if you don't, we have resources.
I totally appreciate that.
So those are the intangibles that you need to start kind of maybe asking some more questions around. And I think 2020 is the perfect example of resilience.
No kidding.
And just kind of like, what's a challenge you've been through? Oh, I don't know, this whole year.
Yeah, if someone didn't mention this year, then I don't know. I would not hire them. If this is not a challenge to somebody, then I don't know what would be.
Right? And is that the person you want? The person who doesn't want to admit they're wrong, doesn't want to admit that they have challenges, doesn't want to admit when they need help? Those aren't those people. I want to hire humans, right? People that I actually want to work with. And especially in small business, like it's important.
It is. Stephanie, you were kind enough to write up some of these thoughts in a blog post for us, and we are cross-publishing that for you. So I encourage everyone that's listening to take a look at the Global Services blog and take a look at some of the tips that Stephanie and the Boost team have given us. I am going to let you have the last word. Any parting thoughts or advice that you think you haven't said? Get a kitten, any...
No kittens nearby, just a lazy dog who's sleeping. It's a heck of a year. It's a heck of a year for all of us. And I think if anything, just act with kindness and grace. Act with that in your personal communications. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Give people a slightly longer leash. Give them a little more kindness. And I think that is something that all of us need. A little more latitude this year. We'll be back at it in 2021. Right now, it's kind of like, just be kind.
I love that because you can see that from both sides, right? You can see it from an employer's perspective to give your employees more latitude and vice versa. I think you need to understand sometimes that as small businesses, we're doing the best we can too. We're plugging along, tell us what you need. But I think everyone does, in fact, need just a little bit more latitude. So thank you so much. And thanks for spending your time. I know you're having a busy day. It's so great to see you.
It's awesome to see you. Thank you.
For being on the new normal. Thanks to all of you who have tuned in. And we will see you next month on our next installment of the new normal. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.